Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to the Cranbourne East Secondary Podcast. Once again, you got myself, Mr. L. We have,
Mr. Young, as always.
and we also have a special guest today. We have
Miss Thomas.
Miss Thomas, who's joining us today. Thank you very much for joining us today, Miss Thomas.
You're welcome.
Just quickly, in case there's any students who haven't had you before, what do you teach at Cranbourne East Secondary?
English.
English.
Just English.
At which year levels?
This year I'm teaching year 7, 10 and 11 VCE.
Ooh.
There we go. So if you do see Miss Thomas around the yard, you now know what she teaches. So yeah, we thought that we would pull in Miss Thomas today to have a quick chat because Miss Thomas, you didn't actually do your high schooling and schooling around Melbourne, did you?
No, I went to high school in New Zealand where I grew up. So
Okay.
I've been in Melbourne for about 5 years now, but yeah, did all of my schooling back in New Zealand down in the South Island.
Okay.
In a little city called Dunedin, which probably wouldn't even be considered a city by Australian
Oh,
standards.
really?
It's more like a big town. It's about 100,000 people. So
Oh, that's still a lot.
Yeah, that's still quite a bit.
yeah, it's decent, but it's not Melbourne, you know.
Of course. But yeah, okay. So you did your primary schooling and high schooling there.
Yes.
And then did you actually teach there as well before you came to
No, so
Melbourne?
I actually did my Masters of Teaching over here in Melbourne. After, so I did all my high schooling and my undergraduate degree in New Zealand, and then when I moved to Melbourne, did my Masters here to become a teacher. So
Okay, that's awesome.
Nice.
Well, New Zealand's always been one of my top places I've wanted to go to. There's usually people who want to go to New Zealand because they want to see the scenery
yep.
or they're Lord of the Rings fans.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now-
it's still probably that they want to see the scenery.
Yeah.
I think that's what
Exactly.
we associate with Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. So I fall into the latter, but you know, the scenery is still the same. I want to go. Have you been before, Mr. Young?
I haven't, but I always wanted to go just because it looks like it's such like a relaxing trip.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like it's kind of looks like it's the perfect place to just sit back, have a coffee, just gaze into the environment and just
Yes,
enjoy your
it
time.
is. And now it's good news because we can actually go for the
Yeah,
first
true.
time
Yes.
in 2 years. The bubble's open.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm actually headed there on Saturday. So
Perfect.
for the first time in 2 years. It's like the longest
so
I've ever
good.
been away. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, I was so happy when I heard that New Zealand was opening up because
Yeah.
for me, like I said, New Zealand was always a place I wanted to go pre-COVID anyway.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine, let's say they opened up another country instead that I wasn't as interested in. I'll be like, yeah, but never really wanted to go anyway. But New Zealand has always been on that list for me. So I'm just like, you know what? Maybe if I find time, it would be a good chance to go over there.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's going to be really good for New Zealand tourism actually, because now it's like Australia, you've got no other options if you want to go overseas. So
Exactly.
come on over to
Yeah,
New
that'd be
Zealand.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need to get like the vaccine to be able to go over?
No, no.
Ah,
So you just, I think there's just a form you've got to fill out, just some bureaucracy, but it's pretty quick. I did it last night, 2 minutes.
Okay.
And that's all you need. Then you're good to go.
That's almost similar to flying interstate, I think.
Yeah,
I think interstate, you
it
are feeling
is,
just a similar
actually.
form. Huh.
Yeah, it was very similar. I was up in New South Wales a few weeks ago, and it's very similar. To that. So it's actually the same as just traveling interstate. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Impromptu trip maybe. Impromptu trip.
Yeah.
School holidays is coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, when this episode is out, it actually will be school holidays.
Yeah.
So Miss Thomas will already be enjoying New Zealand at that time. Perfect. Actually I was thinking because, with you being a teacher over here in Melbourne and you being a student back in New Zealand, were there like any major differences that you saw in our high schools?
Yes. So I'm not sure if this is just the school, I guess, difference. It's hard to know sometimes where it's just a difference because of the school.
Yep.
But I went to an all-girls school. They're a lot more common over there, actually, single-sex schools.
Oh,
like you're
really?
it's kind of odd, actually, if you go to, like, I think in my home city, there were only like 2 or 3 co-ed schools, and the vast majority of them were single sex.
Wow.
So I think that's one, main difference I noticed in schooling between there and here. Yeah. But I think other main differences I notice, and I think this kind of links back into what we were saying about just the New Zealand landscape and I guess making the most of it. But it's a lot more like, I remember being pushed into a lot of extracurriculars when I was at school back there. Like when I talk to people over here, like a lot of students, I think it's actually, from what I've observed, less common to be doing sports and a lot of outdoor activities kind of outside of school. Whereas in New Zealand, it's kind of part of the curriculum. Like you're forced pretty much to do things that are related to the outdoors. And I think that's just a big thing in New Zealand because of the landscape that surrounds us. Like, I think actually it's interesting as well because from, I guess, the perspective of now being a teacher as opposed to a student, because I look at some of the things that I had to do, like for the outdoor, like ed curriculum back there. And I think surely that's illegal now because we had to, there was one trip, I remember we were doing whitewater kayaking. It was like, we were being assessed on whitewater kayaking, and we like got in a bus, had to go like right up to the top of the South Island, like a 10-hour bus trip, and we were, we had to like tick off all this criteria and prove that we could do these particular maneuvers in the kayak. And we were on like grade 3 rapids, which those of you who don't know, you might want to just Google what grade 3 rapids look like because they're pretty intense. And all we'd had to kind of prepare for that was like we had to practice like flipping ourselves in the kayak, like in a pool kind of prior, and we did like a few lessons. And then next minute we were just out in these grade 3 rapids.
Oh, wow.
And I remember like one of the instructors that I was with, she was quite a small lady, and she was, because the rule was that if you flipped under, you had to wait upside down in your kayak and wait, because the best case scenario was that your instructor came and flipped you back up so that you didn't have to pull your skirt out, because if you pulled your skirt out, that meant you had to, like, everyone would have to kind of get out of the water and you'd have to tip the boat to empty all the water. And you wanted to, like, avoid that at all costs. But at one point, I remember I was like, I flipped over and I was like just waiting, you know, under my kayak. And I felt my instructor like trying to flip me back up. And she like tried a couple of times. And then I just thought, no, I'm not going to wait any longer. I've got to pull out my skirt because I can't like. But I think, there was only like one student that could actually successfully flip herself back up in the rapids, and the rest of us were just kind of at the mercy of like waiting to be pulled back up. And I just think the thought of going on a trip, like I didn't think about it from this angle at the time, but the thought of being a teacher and going on that kind of trip, like I think I'd have I don't think I could handle that.
I might have a heart attack at least.
Dramatic.
So I think, for some reason, like, it's just, and this wasn't, I guess, unusual. Like, this was a common thing. Like, we got, it was just, a lot more outdoors focused, and it was strongly encouraged. And, so I think that's one main difference, is just a lot more of an emphasis on outdoors and on physicality. And, like, I remember having to run triathlons and, so that's one main difference. But the other thing, I guess, from an English teacher perspective, like thinking back to when I was an English student, one thing I did notice, I guess, about the curriculum, this is a little bit more boring than talking about whitewater kayaking and being under rapids, but I think, from that kind of perspective, I remember having a lot more freedom actually with text in English, like especially as a VCE teacher here. The fact that, you know, the state decides this text list and you're stuck to those and that's your only option. Whereas in New Zealand, one of the main differences is that the teacher, the classroom teacher can actually choose the text for themselves, which sounds crazy. Like I mentioned it to Miss Davy White, and she was like, how are the examiners going to know if this kid's got it right, you know? But for some reason New Zealand's not too phased about that either, and the classroom teacher has full freedom to choose And I think I would like that as an English teacher,
yeah,
like to be able to
sure.
choose a text for my class, because I think over here there's a lot of actually debate around who gets to decide these texts and why is it that because teachers want to cater to their school context and want to cater to the students and be able to give them a text that they think that their students are going to enjoy.
Yeah.
Like we want to, give you I guess it's a mark of being able to keep the students engaged in a text, and that's what we as English teachers want. And I think in New Zealand there's a lot more freedom to do that as opposed to being tied to this state list, because there's so many debates now around diversity and around the fact that we've got Australia being very multicultural, and particularly a big metropolitan city like Melbourne. And a lot of the texts, I mean, it's getting slowly better, but now that there's kind of more debate around it, but a lot of the texts are kind of white.
Definitely. Yeah.
And not very relevant. Like they don't feel as relevant to society now, which, so I think that's one positive that kind of, makes me curious as to what it would be like to teach English in New Zealand.
For sure.
I kind of identify to that because like I remember studying English throughout my high school years, and all of the books that I read, I was kind of like, I kind of don't get it because it doesn't really fit with how I was growing up and all of that. Until I got to one of my year 9 classes in Chinese school. Fun fact, they do English in Chinese school as well. And they made me analyze a story, and I forgot the title of that book, but it was basically about a Chinese-born Australian,
Right.
and it was how she was growing up in her house.
Yeah.
And then that was like the first book that I had to analyze that I actually identified with, and I realized how powerful that was.
Oh,
for me.
yeah. I remember, I feel like one of the texts that some schools have chosen is like an anthology of Asian immigrant stories, and Ando wrote one of them, and one of the famous Chinese chefs, she wrote one of them. I forgot the name of the book, but it is a part of the Year 12 VC text, but I know our school doesn't do it. They do it as a second option. So I've seen like 1 or 2 students read it because they can't read the main text, whatever that text was. But yeah, I remember helping out some family friends looking at their English and like, oh, hey, this is a pretty interesting one. But I think I had a pretty similar experience to Mr. Young actually, where in Year 12 literature, we had to read Mao's Last Dancer.
Oh, yeah.
I cried.
Yeah.
Like crazy. I like reading the story about their family tradition, and I could actually identify with that family tradition of like the values and so on. Oh, it was so powerful. I loved it. Yeah.
See, that's a sign, like the fact that you cried, like that's a sign, that's a good text choice for you because you can kind of relate to it more on some level. Like it's more, so I think that's one big difference. But hopefully things will continue to change here, and we'll be able to get a lot more diversity in the texts that we're choosing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of diversity in Asian culture as well, now, Miss Thomas, you just shared with us earlier that other than teaching in Melbourne, you've taught somewhere else around the world as well, though, haven't you?
Yeah, so I actually taught for a year and a half. I taught English in South Korea in a primary school, actually.
Awesome. Yeah. Did you do it through like a program or?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think I remember one of my friends who just got back from South Korea, and the program was called EPIC or something like that.
That's what I went through.
You went through?
Yeah.
What a good guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
English program in Korea. That's what it stands for.
Oh, is that what it stands for?
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought it was just EPIC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's EPIK.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what she told me was that you had to choose, I believe, and then they send you to the one that they see fit. So, like my friend, she chose Seoul first, then Busan, then Jeju, and she got Jeju instead. I believe. So she had to be like, it was like an 8-hour bus drive for her from Seoul to university. So you got, which one did you teach at?
So I was in Busan, which is the second biggest city in Korea, which is down right on the southern kind of coast, right on the beach.
So nice.
Which was nice. Yeah. So we had to just choose a province. So we didn't get to choose like cities. Like we had to choose it. We had to narrow down to a specific province. So you kind of took the risk of like, because a lot of my friends that I kind of met at orientation, they all ended up in an even smaller city, kind of further away, and I was like the only one that that got put like in a big city like Busan.
Nice.
But it was good. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you learn any like few Korean phrases whilst you were there as well?
I did. Yes. Just like to be honest, I wasn't as, I kind of look back and regret on the little that I did learn. Like I did try, like I learned how to read the characters, and I was able to I learned enough to get me through kind of the everyday little things. But one of the things I found, because when I was kind of trying to make more of an effort to learn more, one of the things, because I mean, my everyday life was just with like a group of my co-teachers kind of in the school, and they kind of wanted to use me to learn more English. So I found whenever I was trying to learn Korean and speak to them, they would all try and be speaking to me in English, because they saw me as a chance to improve their English as well. So it was a bit of a battle actually. But yeah, no, I learnt I guess just the everyday phrases to kind of be polite. Like I learned how to ask how much something was, or like say hello and thank you, and kind of all those little things. But it is a very difficult language as well. So
Do you have a particular type of meal that you remember was the most memorable one over there? Is there something that you love to eat over there? Or?
There's a few actually. I was a really big fan of Korean barbecue. Like, how do you not be? I mean, it's kind of a big deal.
I just had it last night.
It's kind of a big deal in Melbourne now. But I also remember, because now kimchi is like a fad over here, and it's like become, one of those kind of hipster things that people are suddenly just loving. But when I first went over there, because I was over there 2013. And kimchi hadn't really made it, over here yet. And I got
it was so
there
hard
and
to find kimchi, like back then.
True. I guess because now it's like all the organic shops are kind of, they've climbed on the bandwagon, and you can find it, pretty easily. But this was kind of before that, and I got to Korea, and it was, so hyped, and everyone was like, and it actually is with every single meal.
Sure.
You get kimchi, like without fail. And I actually, because the way it works actually in Korea is that as a teacher, you pay a small monthly fee, and then you get served your lunch every day from the cafeteria.
Really? Okay.
So every day I got like a traditional Korean meal,
So
like
good.
just served, like everyone, like lunch was more of an event. Like, here we're so busy, we just eat at our desks if we eat at all.
I know, right?
But over there, like it's a cultural thing. You make time to eat, and everyone went and sat down. Like there was a big dining table for all the teachers, and you would go and get your lunch, and you would go and sit in the dining table, and all eat together, like around one big dining table, which it was like one of the things I really miss actually. I really liked that aspect of the culture, I guess. But I would say Korean barbecue, but I also love so it's called kimchi jjigae, which is like the stew, like kimchi stew.
The tofu.
And one of the things I really rate, so the Koreans, they love putting their rice in their soup. And I really love that as well. Like it's such a nice, like it's just, it kind of makes sense, because rice is quite dry, and you've got all this liquid and flavor, and it just kind of is logical to me now to put like the rice in the soup. So I think those are the main things. I remember.
They do this really nice thing. Like, so they have army stew, which is really close to the kimchi jjigae. And then after like they've finished most of the soup, they then chuck the rice in and make a fried rice out of that soup base.
I remember.
That's so good.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm mean, yeah, us as teachers, we do only gather around as the giant staff once a year, which is the final, and it is always fun. I always wish we sometimes could do it a bit more when it's a curriculum day or something. But yeah, Miss Thomas, did you find that your tolerance for spicy food increased whilst you were there, or did you have very extremely spicy food much?
I've always thought of myself as having a pretty high chili tolerance even before I went.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually too different for me, I don't think. They were, everyone, like all of my co-teachers were always like fussing like around me, like, oh, is this too spicy? You know, like Asian people always worry that it's going to be too spicy for a white person. It's like, can you not be so stereotypical?
So good. That's so true. Oh, that's so right. Yeah. I feel like because of me being Asian, people expect me to be able to eat spicy, and I'm just like sweating. I'm just like, oh, I'm dying.
But you like don't want to admit that.
Exactly.
You don't want to admit defeat.
Yeah.
It's like a bit of an internal wall.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So for your primary school in Korea, you actually had the set cohort that you worked with the entire year, correct? Or did because I was talking to my friend, and maybe it's a school by school thing, I don't know, but for her school, apparently they had like a primary school, but the kids come from other primary schools in the region, and they would come to their school for like a set 2 weeks, like every day those 2 weeks, and then they do almost like intense English activities and courses, and then they move on. So I'm guessing yours wasn't like that?
No, it wasn't like that. I was just, so I worked with, I think, 4 co-teachers I had, and they all had their own classes, and I got a timetable that I think it works the way the tutors work here now. So I would just be allocated to specific classes with that teacher. And I would be with like like the same class, usually twice a week.
Okay.
And I would just, like they would kind of, that class would have their one day where I would show up and I would run the class instead of their Korean, their Korean English teachers. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. I can see maybe every school there ran quite differently, huh?
Yeah, sounds like it. So I think it was also one of those things I will say that the school, like, they love to market you. Like,
I know what you
they
mean.
love to advertise the fact that they've got, a native English speaker at the school, and there was a lot of photos taken, and I was on the newsletter a lot of times, and definitely keen to let all the parents know that their kids are learning English from a native English speaker. So that wasn't strictly in the job description marketing, but
it comes
that's
with
what
the
it
role.
felt like sometimes.
Did you have people coming up for autographs?
No, but I did actually have, so my family from New Zealand came to visit me one day when I was in Korea, and they came into the school. See, this is hilarious because this would never be allowed to happen here, but over there, it was actually, that's the other thing I noticed. There's a lot more, there's a lot less restrictions. Like, I think it's actually the way we think of, like, I guess being a teacher professional over here, there's like a very clear line.
I know what you mean.
And in Korea, I found the attitudes were a lot more relaxed.
So
in
family
some
could
ways.
just come visit?
So I had to, like, ask the principal. But he was just like, yeah, of course, like, and they just came straight in. So it was like, my dad, my sister, my brother, and my mum, and they, when I told the kids what was happening, they just lost it. They got so excited, and they thought it was so cute. And then they were all like, the day they came and they were walking in, like, all the kids were like wanting high fives from my dad and my brother, and it was like my mum and dad said they felt like complete celebrities walking into the classroom.
That's amazing.
But then we used it as like a lesson, like it was a chance for because we kind of framed it as a chance for the kids to practice their English, talking to my family and like having a conversation and trying to ask them, details about themselves. So it was hilarious.
That sounds so fun. Yeah, I could imagine definitely. My parents, they've always said that, you know, if there was regulations weren't so strict, they would always love to come and check me out working here. Because in all my part-time jobs previously, they would come check in once, like, do you actually work here?
Yeah.
Are you sure? You actually work here? You didn't come to this country just to holiday and make a lie and, you know, like, you know, that type of stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty funny. So it comes to that part of our episode now where we share a recommendation to you, whether it's a TV show or a movie or something. And then we will provide those links in the description below for you to go check it out yourselves. So who would like to share their TV show first?
I guess I'll just start. So just basically jumping on the South Korean train. My show that
Busan?
no.
Almost.
That was pretty good.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so my TV show that I'm recommending is on Netflix. It's called Hospital Playlist. And so, like, check the age rating and see if it's appropriate for you to watch. And basically, it's a playlist, or not playlist, it's a show, a TV show that basically focuses on 5 elite doctors that work in a specific hospital. So it basically, you know how you watch some shows and it takes a really long time for it to just get started and for you to like engage into it. This one, like, literally first 10 minutes, bam, you're in the first thing.
Yeah.
So, and it's like you just watch it and like you just watch in complete shock at how fast they've just jumped into things as if like that you should know what's happening. But also the good thing about it is that it'll be fully like, it's a full Korean drama, but they do their best to keep as accurate as they can.
Medically speaking,
to make it like accurate to
I have respect for shows that do that.
Yeah. But then they're also like, if there's a term that people don't know, like what they'll
Medical
do
terms,
is medical terms, they'll actually list it on the screen and then it'll actually like somehow educate you a little bit on what's going on.
Yeah.
And then like, it's one of those shows where like, you know how hospital shows typically have a good ending and all that? For them, it's like just very, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. Sometimes there's good news, sometimes there's not so good news, sometimes there's horrible news. And they like just show 5 like fictional characters, but they show their experiences through that. And it's really like, it really engages you really well.
Because what I have heard from the show is that it's like a Korean show, but it doesn't feel like your Korean drama type of normal tropes. Like you don't get like those love triangles and then someone's mother-in-law comes and slaps someone across the face. Like you don't get
someone loses all their memory.
Yeah, you don't get the usual stuff. So I heard that it's quite grounded in reality, and that's one of the things about the show.
Yeah, they really like to show the raw emotions. Like there's quite a few scenes in the whole show where you kind of feel extremely like it's gut-wrenching at some points because of what's happened to the patients.
I see. Cool. Ms. Thomas?
So I think I'm going to go with The Handmaid's Tale. So again, check that, you have to check that the age rating is appropriate for you, and it does come with a pretty hefty content warning, I would say, because it's definitely not for the faint-hearted, and that it's, I think, well, it's set, you know, in a dystopian future where, like, I think the thing I love about it, because I've read the book and I've been a big fan of the book, but I love how it just shows, because I think if it went straight to the dystopia, it would seem kind of really far-fetched, and it would be like, okay, how did we, as, you know, a population get to that point?
Yes.
But what the TV show kind of fills in is like the gradual, like the very gradual kind of release towards that dystopia. And I think, you know, it kind of, there's just this one point where all of a sudden, it's just like the woman can no longer access their bank accounts, and like they've just been cut off, and their husbands have been given full rights. It is a very, like, I would say, it's, there are some very gruesome scenes to watch, and there's a lot of like physical torture and things like that. So it's definitely, as I say, not for the faint-hearted. But I think it's a very clear, kind of relevant thing that has, you know, like I guess I like watching things that have, you know, feminist themes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why I like it, because it serves as a pretty strong, I guess, cautionary tale.
Of course.
And I see things that I can kind of relate to what's happening now, and it doesn't seem too far-fetched.
It gets you thinking.
And it's also one of those shows that's like, it's just really raw. Like, you can really just feel the emotions being communicated. There's like no gloss over or like sugarcoating.
Of course, yeah. And like for me, I haven't seen the show or read the books, but I know the impact of the books, because one of the things that I like to do when I'm just washing my dishes is I like to turn on TED videos.
Yeah.
And then they sometimes do summaries of like, you know, famous books. And you know, the Handmaid's Tale was one of the episodes they kind of explained it and why the author wrote it.
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing about it and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I've seen this title on like TV before somewhere. So then I kind of made that link. But yeah, like it was like you mentioned, it's quite different for some parts, isn't it? Yeah, but the overarching story is kind of the same, but it's a little bit different. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it just shows, like, it shows that, because it's, even though it seems very far-fetched in the beginning, it just goes back and shows you that actually it's not.
Yeah.
And I think in that regard, it's really interesting. And Margaret Atwood, the writer, like, she was a very ardent, I guess, feminist. Like, a lot of her books have very feminist themes as well.
I remember some of the books.
So it is, it's a hard to watch show, but it's, really good.
Definitely. Like you said, it's a warning for our society to think about.
Yes.
So, leading on from that, I guess same thing as I was mentioned before. Sometimes when I'm washing my dishes, I just turn on random YouTube videos to kind of, you know, kill time, learn a bit. And one of the YouTube channels that I do watch is called Game Theory, where they get like far-fetched things that happen in video games, and they kind of talk about, all right, does this actually work in a real-life science context? So what he did for one of the episodes, he asked this question around Pokemon, and I'm a huge Pokemon fan. And then in order for this person to like find out whether or not this thing was plausible in real life and so on, he had to watch every single episode of Pokemon. And it was like literally, he said 600 and something episodes. And I'm like, you know what? I actually have watched all the original series of Pokemon. So if you haven't and you only know Pokemon for what it is now, back then Pokemon fever was a thing. It was a real thing. Like I remember it was the 1990s, probably early, like 94, 95, probably around that time. Everything was Pokemon. Like you would have no idea what the world was like. It's crazy. But just if you haven't had a chance, check out the first series of Pokemon. So, you know, two very serious ones and one very lighthearted one to balance it out for you.
Wait, when you're saying like back in the day, like everything was very Pokemonized, is it like now in BTS? Like we have a Happy Meal.
Yes.
We have a meal for BTS.
I would say it's similar degree. But I think the Pokemon reached larger because it's definitely. I'm not saying that BTS doesn't appeal to both boys and girls, but you know, there's a large majority of girls. But back then, how they marketed it in the morning, right? So easily accessible, and they just made it, and the toys were coming at you left, right, and center. You know, so it was
I'm even just thinking of a few years ago when that Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go,
out,
right?
And I think that went insane. Like, and I think that's maybe that generation.
For sure.
And then, like you were telling me at one point, like there were people who were like going out with multiple phones playing Pokemon Go as well.
Yeah.
And
like,
definitely. There's also there's a park when Pokemon Go first came out. And what happened was, because it spawned rare Pokemon, everyone crowded to that park to the point where literally they didn't care. They were just parking in all these illegal spots. And the council gained so much money from just giving out fines at that one time. Yeah. It was crazy. But
people that like insisted on it, they didn't really care if they had to pay a huge parking fine.
Exactly.
That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do.
I'll just catch this part of code onto my phone. And like cop the $75 or something fine.
Yeah, I wonder how many of them still play the game now, because if you don't, then you've wasted that money. But if you still do, all right, I mean, props to you, but Pokemon ended up becoming quite common later on anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much for taking time out today, Miss Thomas, for speaking
No
with
worries.
us and speaking to our listeners. So if you got any suggestions, listeners, feel free to fill out the Google form below. Talk about, what things you want to hear about or which teachers you want to see on. But until then, have a happy and safe holiday, and we'll see you all back at school term 3. All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.